Okay, members, don't know if I think we are live. You're all very welcome to this, our final meeting of the Committee for the Communities of this mandate. As you'll all be aware, this meeting is fully virtual today, so that's going to be a complete nightmare, I can admit, for us all. Yeah, and just to warn members, I have an unruly dog running around the house, so we might have to stop if his barking becomes pretty bad. Can I then just start by just saying who's on the meeting at the moment? So we have Anya Murphy, Ciara Ferguson, and the Vice Chair, Kelly Armstrong. Mark has texted me to say that he will be joining shortly. So I'll move to agenda item 1, which is apologies. I have apologies from Andy Allen and Stephen Dunn. Moving on to agenda item 2, Chairperson's business. First thing I want to say is pass on the committee's condolences to Andy Allen on his sad loss, and just to let him know that we're thinking about him at this time. Members, you've also been provided with a letter of thanks from the Minister in your tabled papers, which is much appreciated, and we also thank the Minister for her time and her diligence and support with the committee. And then I also want to say a few words of thanks to all the members who have been on committee during this mandate, past and present. The Vice Chair, Kelly Armstrong, for stepping in when needed, and she has stepped in and stepped up for me over the last sort of 4 months when I've needed her to do it at a moment's notice. So thank you, Kelly, for that. Committee team, wider Assembly Secretariat, as I said, the Minister, her officials who have worked well during the course of our bills and other business, and all of the witnesses who have been before us providing oral evidence, and also the ones that provided written evidence. So I think we've got through such a lot in such a short time. We've done many extra meetings, and people have really stepped up to the mark. So well done all. So that's my final chair's business for forever, really. So thank you for that. I'm going to move on then to agenda item 3, which is the draft minutes. Members, you'll find the draft minutes from the meetings on the 10th and 16th of March 2022 at page 7 of your packs. Are members content to agree the minutes of the 10th and 16th as drafted? I need somebody to unmute themselves. Do you agree? No, sorry, Janice has just said we can't agree the minutes at this stage because we don't have enough people. So yeah, we've only 4 members. We need another member to agree the draft minutes. So whenever we get an extra member, we'll go back to that. So if we just keep an eye on that if anybody else comes in. Excuse me. Can we move on then to agenda item 4, which is matters arising? Members, we have 14 matters arising to get through. So please keep your comments as short as possible, and that would be very helpful. Just to remind members as well, really we can't continue anyway to write letters further back and forward. This is the last committee meeting, but if there's anything pressing, of course, those responses will go to the new Committee for Communities. So matters arising, I'll go to the first one then. You've been provided at page 22 with the departmental response in relation to the Community Development Networks Forum. The reply states that the Minister has agreed to extend existing infrastructure support programmes for a further 2 years for the period 22-24. The Department is now committed to a fundamental refresh of the policy and funding frameworks that support the community and voluntary sector. There's also plans for a review of the people and place strategy for neighbourhood renewal in order to optimise the approach to tackling deprivation across society. Members, any comments, or content to note and forward a copy of the reply to the Community Development Networks Forum?
Chair, if I could come in, it's Kelly.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I think my Surface Pro may break up on me. The joys of being in Parliament buildings on a Surface Pro. I welcome this review that'll be coming up. My issue is that we have community and voluntary organisations in rural areas are slightly differently treated than our urban counterparts, and it would be good in the review. I know there's nothing that this committee can do on it, but perhaps the next committee will look at whether or not that both rural and urban are aligned, so that the benefits that both could be shared across both.
No, and look, thank you for that, Kelly. Other than that, members content then to note and forward a copy then through the Community Development Networks Forum. Yeah,
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Next item, members, if you turn to page 24, you've been provided with a departmental response in relation to the SIA letter on recommendations on the bedding bill. The department is happy to share any information around this issue with SIA and to include in it any future consultation on the industry levy. The Minister agrees with the committee that it makes sense for her department and SIA to work together on these matters. Again, any comments? Are you content to note?
Content.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Then we'll move on. Members have been provided at page 26 with a departmental response in relation to the emergency fuel payment and energy support schemes. Members, we asked several questions in relation to these issues and the department has responded to each question. I don't intend to go into this in too much detail as it's a very comprehensive response, but want to ask members, have you any comments? Are you content to note? Content. I know.
I suppose, Chair, I would just say it's. I don't know whether you can hear me because of this Surface Pro. Just to say that there was opportunities and there are opportunities that we could help more people, but at this stage, unfortunately, with the assembly now going down, there isn't anything more that can be brought forward at this stage. But I can sincerely hope that anybody who can get access to the emergency payment scheme does so before the 31st of March, when that closes off.
No, and thank you for that, Kelly. Any other comments, members, or happy we move on? Okay, I'm going to move on then to the next agenda, or to the next item under matters arising. If you could turn to page 35, you'll see a departmental response in relation to the PAC report on the Sports Sustainability Fund. A detailed memorandum of reply will be prepared, which will set out the Department of Finance Minister's response to the issues raised and to the recommendations in the report. The general guiding principle is that it is inappropriate to comment in detail in advance of this. DFC officials have liaised with Department of Finance to ensure that the proper protocols and processes are followed. Once a formal response has been agreed, the Department of Finance Minister issues the memorandum of reply. The department can liaise further with Communities Committee on this matter. Again, members, any comments are content to note. Northern Ireland 2021 and SR 2022-88, the Energy Payment Support Schemes Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. The department has acknowledged in correspondence that the regulations were laid in breach of the 21-day rule and explained the breach. The ASR is content that the department has on this occasion provided a satisfactory explanation for the brief. Members, any comments or content to note? Content? Yeah, okay. I think we've lost Kelly now and we've got Paul has come in. Paul, you're very welcome. Good to have you with us. I know Kelly is using her Surface Pro up in Parliament Buildings, which is not overly stable, the Wi-Fi up there. So hopefully we'll get her back in again soon. I'm going to move on then. If you could turn then to page 53, where you'll see a response, Paul, by the way, we're at Matters Arising and we're at item number 6 under Matters Arising. So page 53, where you'll see a response from the Housing Executive on the thermal insulation programme. The reply states that this programme could take up to 20 years to complete and will require funding of around 1.8 billion. The Housing Executive's ability to deliver this programme is wholly dependent on a sustainable funding solution. At present, they are hopeful that the Minister's Housing Executive Revitalisation Programme will do so. In the interim, they have taken the first steps via the Energy Efficiency in Social Housing Programme to fund external wall insulation to 1,900 of its properties up until the end of 2023. Members, any comments or content to note? No comments. Content. I know it's this. And it's another one that, I don't know where they're possibly getting the money from this. but it's one that will need to be watched in the next mandate, certainly. So members, happy we move on then to our next item, and there with Kelly back with us again, so that's good. Actually, before I move on to the next item, just in case we lose again in the interim, can I ask then if we get to go back to agenda item 3, draft minutes? I think there's enough of us now, isn't there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there are. Members, the draft minutes of the 10th and the 16th of March are at page 7 of your pack. As this is the final meeting today, so I need to ask firstly, are you content with the draft minutes of the 10th and 16th of March? Content? Oh, we've lost Kelly again. Hold on, she's back. Sorry. We'll bring Kelly back in again. Well, Kelly, you're having bother up there with us. Okay, so while we've 5 again, can I just then
Apologies, Paula, I'm dropping in and out here with the Wi-Fi where I'm at.
I know you are, so I'm just going to ask then again, before we lose you, are we content with the minutes of the 16th or 10th and 16th of March as drafted? Content, folks?
Content.
Okay. Also want to say, as this is the final meeting today, I need to ask at this stage if you're content that I sign off the minutes from today's meeting. They will be forwarded to me by the team after today's meeting. Are members also content with that?
Content.
Content. Look, thank you. All right, I'm going to move back then to Matters Arising, and we're going on to Matters Arising 7. So if you could turn to page 55, you'll see a departmental response on the Access and Inclusion Programme.
Content, if you can hear me.
Okay, I don't even need to read it out. Kelly's content with that. So she is. So that's the contract with Disability Sport NI expires on the 31st of August 2023. In late spring of 2023, officials will consult with the department's central procurement team on the development of a new tender competition to ensure that organisations invited to tender represent the needs of the disability sector. So again, can I ask content or any comments? Content?
Content.
Thank you. Then we'll move on to page 56, where you'll see a departmental response on antisocial behaviour. The Housing Executive does not have a statutory duty to house any individual where their behaviour has made them unsuitable for allocation of social housing. Individuals excluded on the grounds of unacceptable behaviour are required to make their own arrangements for accommodation, but are entitled to advice to help them secure this. There is a review group on antisocial behaviour, including DOJ, DFC, the PSNI, the Housing Executive and Housing Associations, with the aim of considering proposals for new antisocial behaviour legislation to be introduced. Again, members, can I ask, are you content to note or any comments?
Chair, I just think that we're talking about such a small number of people. Obviously, there's nothing as a committee we can do now, but there's a new homelessness strategy has been put out. It's disappointing to think that there may be people that, okay, antisocial behaviour is horrendous, but there may be people who have other additional issues that will not be provided with any state housing, which is a bit concerning.
No, I know that. But as I say, that you're quite right, there's not a great deal we can do at this stage. I think we've tried our best with this one to try and get as much detail as possible. And again, this will be for the new Committee for Communities to pick up. Members, happy I move on? Okay, I'm going to move on. Then Matters Arising 10. Members, you've been provided at page 59 with a departmental response on future hybrid council meetings. The Local Government Meetings and Performance Act Northern Ireland 2021 allows the department by subordinate legislation to make further provision on remote council meetings, which includes the power to make such provisions permanent. The intention remains to develop such subordinate legislation, and further engagement between officials and the local government sector is the next step. Members, I know we had heard that in the chamber during the week whenever we were looking at the Coronavirus Act to extend virtual council meetings, so we know work is ongoing. Members, any comments or content to note? Content? Yep. Nobody's saying anything. No, there we go. And just can I just remind members, we have a few more extras have joined us, which is great because we need you here because we can't make decisions without you. So Aisling Riley has also joined the meeting. and Mark Durkin, and Kelly has gone down into the audience again, so if somebody can bring her up to the spotlight, that would be good. So just for anybody just joining us, we're still at Matters Arising, and we're at number 11 on Matters Arising. So if I could ask you to turn then to page 60, where you'll see a departmental response on spend date on the sub-regional stadia programme. Since August 2020, a dedicated team has been in place to oversee the refresh and re-engagement exercise at a cost of £185,000 for the period up to December 2021. Specialist advisory costs have also been incurred to support officials with the refresh and re-engagement exercise as follows for this period. 89,594 for Strategic Investment Board and 2,850 for business consultancy services. Members, any comments or content to note? Content? Let me know.
Content, yeah.
Okay.
Content.
All right. Bear with me, just 2 ticks. I've taken you off the screen by mistake. There we are. You're all back in again. Okay, moving on then. Page 61, you'll see a departmental response on supporting people programme. The Northern Ireland Housing Executive has provided the following information. Annex A, supporting people directory information by thematic area. This has been issued separately by email to members, and Annex B, maps of supporting people services by council area. So members, any comments or content to note? Content? It's good to have that information. Yep, content, okay. Then we'll move on to page 66, where you'll see a departmental response on the gender pay gap. The response states that the Minister is committed to addressing the gender pay gap via the implementation of Section 19 of the Employment Act Northern Ireland 2016 and the development of the Executive's Gender Equality Strategy. Again, members, any comments or content to note?
Content.
Okay.
Content.
Thank you. Moving on then, page 68, you'll see a departmental response on Northern Ireland Housing Executive January monitoring bids. The Minister announced on the 3rd of March 2022 that she'd secured £16 million for the Housing Executive for the implementation of the Tower Block Action Plan and thermal insulation programmes. The Housing Executive has confirmed that £10 million of this funding will be allocated to the thermal insulation programme. We know from our previous matter arising earlier that that's just a drop in the ocean for what the Housing Executive need. But members, any comments or content to note? Content?
Content, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, members, that's all our matters arising finished, so thank you for that. We're going to move on then to agenda item 5, which is our draft legacy report. Members, you'll find a draft copy of the committee's legacy report at page 71. The legacy report is intended as a factual snapshot of the overall work of the committee and a selection of key areas that the new committee may wish to consider taking forward. At the end of last week's meeting, I'd requested that any comments be sent to the clerk by the 16th of March and none were received. So can I ask members, have they any comments on any part of the text of the report, or are they content that the report is published pending any tidying up and formatting, etc.? Yes, content, members?
Content, yeah.
Okay. Then, members, I wish to inform you that a committee record of attendance at meetings will be published on the committee pages of the Assembly website, and when published, you may wish to check and assure yourselves that that is correct. Okay, members? All right, members, we're going to then move on to agenda item 6, which is a briefing by DePaul on delivering housing first services in Northern Ireland. You'll find a copy of their briefing paper is at page 109 of your pack. So without further ado, can I welcome David Carroll and Deirdre Canavan. These are both very welcome to the meeting today. So if I could ask you, is it yourself, David, or Deirdre, who's going to brief the committee?
It's myself, Paula. So thanks very much. I'm not sure whether you can see me or not.
No, we can't see you, David, but we can hear you.
You can hear me, sure.
And we can see Deirdre's smiling face.
Absolutely, she can make up for it. But thank you so much to the committee for this opportunity to brief you on Housing First. DePaul are an organisation that work in Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland providing over 40 specialised services aimed at people with complex needs, and also a part of an international group, of which actually DePaul, Ukraine, is part of that international group as well. So the Ukrainian issue is obviously at the forefront of our minds at the moment. We, as I said, really grateful for the opportunity to be able to present today. First of all, I suppose, what is Housing First? And Housing First is a response for people with complex needs and rough sleeping who have traumatic and complex lives, with the philosophy that ordinary housing in ordinary communities and a person-centred approach is required. It dispels the myth that people are not ready for housing and have to go through the hostel system in order to be able to access housing and have long-term housing solutions. There are no preconditions for an individual to access housing, and broadly, it's someone who has complex needs, who is homeless or rough sleeping, should be housed or maintained in accommodation with wrap-around supports. If we look at the approach, I suppose, in other jurisdictions, we have a national rollout in Scotland over a Pathfinder approach over 5 cities. And in August 2021, there were over 545 Housing First tenancies established. 84% of them were regarded as being maintained and successful. There are also 3 Pathfinder cities in England. That is with an investment of over £30 million to establish Housing First. And in the Republic of Ireland, there's been a recent additional commitment to an additional 1,300 tenancies in the Republic around Housing First, aimed at people with complex needs. So why Housing First? Well, it's normal. It's a normal approach for people. It's fairer to the individuals. The big message that I want to get across this morning is that it works. International evidence shows that between 80 to 90% of tenancies that are established under Housing First concepts and fidelities are maintained. And the evidence that we have as far as our own approach within Northern Ireland, of which we run 2 services in Belfast and Derry, Londonderry, actually underlines that as well. It's more effective at resolving homelessness. It's more cost effective and leads to more of a effective approach in terms of homeless people themselves. A recent English study shows that annual individual cost of providing Housing First services can be 40 to 60% lower than the provision of hostel and accommodation. So in 2013, DePaul established a Housing First pilot with the Housing Executive. We've gone on to establish 2 services, as I've mentioned already, and we provide 44 places in the 2 cities in Belfast and Derry City. We have a number of evaluations that have been conducted over the number of years, the most latest one being in 2018, where we showed that we were adhering to the fidelity of the international model for Housing First. If Housing First is to work, it requires strong relationships with statutory and community-based services in order, and the involvement of criminal justice and health and medical services and PSNI are absolutely critical in order to be able to provide the wraparound services that are required in order for us to be able to deliver this effectively. As I said, the interventions that we have within the paper actually demonstrates the particular approach that we use, where you will see that the majority of the interventions are focused towards alcohol and drug use and physical health interventions, and then tenancies, managing tenancy and accommodation, with offending and self-care and living skills being a major factor of all of this. As I said earlier on, the success rate of Housing First from our own perspective lies between 79% and 84%, which is hugely kind of important in order to be able to demonstrate the effectiveness of the model. So we absolutely feel that progress has been made in the introduction of Housing First in Northern Ireland. It is part of the Chronic Homelessness Strategy and Action Plan. It is mentioned in the Temporary Accommodation Review and the Interdepartmental Homelessness Action Plan. And I think there's increased collaboration and commitment. And certainly, I think with the establishment of the Complex Lives programme by the Housing Executive in Belfast, I think demonstrates a commitment to a regional introduction. So with the current budgetary situation, I think all indications are that I think the department and also the Housing Executive are committed to a full regional rollout. However, if the budgetary situation continues as it is, there'll be more of a focus on the temporary accommodation aspect rather than long-term housing permanent options. But we would recommend the following in the future. Obviously, we would like to see a full regional rollout of Housing First. We estimate that 1,500 tenancies probably would be required, although that has to be underpinned by a specific report. We would like to see an interdepartmental oversight and direction and a high-level departmental and government commitment. If Housing First is to be introduced, the housing supply strategy is absolutely key, with a firm commitment to the provision of Housing First tenancies as part of that supply strategy. We'd like to see the introduction of a task force on Housing First, a Northern Ireland Housing First director, as has been introduced in Scotland and in the Republic of Ireland. We absolutely need to define now fully what the Housing First model looks like from a Northern Irish context, because all of the international studies do demonstrate that we have to provide the local conditions in order for us to be able to understand what it means for Northern Ireland. We're very eager for a full feasibility study, a costed study on what a comprehensive regional rollout looks like. We'd like to see further investment in front support. And as I mentioned earlier on, what is absolutely key to this, and you will have heard this, Paula, over and over again within the committee, the interdepartmental links between health, criminal justice, PSNI are absolutely key in order to be able to provide the wraparound supports for this. So we're really positive and optimistic. We believe fundamentally that everybody has a right to a home. If you look at in conclusion, the success that has been achieved in Finland, where now they only have 200 temporary accommodation beds in the whole country, because they introduced Housing First 15 years ago in a strategic, coordinated manner. We absolutely feel that a full commitment to Housing First is central to the homelessness strategy and housing strategy going forward. So thank you very much.
David, thank you very much. And just put on record from the committee our thanks to DePaul. You've been doing invaluable work over the years here in Northern Ireland. I know I went and met with some of you, and that would have been some time ago at our old DSD committee, and had a chance to go out and meet with you. So well done on what you have done. And it just shows again the need that we have out there. And I absolutely agree with you. We've had previous briefings in this committee and also in the all-party group on homelessness. When we look at preventative measures, we look at long-term housing solutions, and temporary accommodation is not right. It's not right for anybody. And I think we all should be working towards that, to eliminating that. And it's actually quite encouraging there to hear what Finland are doing. I also get where you're coming from when you talk about departments working together. I've been here long enough to know how that doesn't work. and that really does need to work, especially when it comes to this issue. I think I'd said it certainly at a recent housings hustings that there is a need for some sort of housing champion within government. The way we have a mental health champion, we need that housing champion to hold all of those departments to account and to ensure that they're actually doing what they said they're going to do and to deliver for people. Because as we all know, quite often one department will be left with others with minimal input. So I suppose just to ask that first of all, and just remind members have their hands up already, so keen to ask some questions here. Just to ask firstly, just how involved have the other departments been, and any discussions you've had with them. You'd also heard, maybe been listening in to us earlier when we were talking about antisocial behaviour and that the housing executive don't have a statutory duty to house people, and we know that antisocial behaviour can be for many reasons because people have complex lives and complex life histories. So just to say that it's good that there's no preconditions when it comes to yourselves.
Absolutely, Paula. I'm just on that first point in terms of what involvement. We have fantastic involvement on the ground. So we kind of primary care teams, with community addiction teams, where I think the second point, and this has been reiterated, COVID has been a game changer in terms of the involvement of health in particular. And what we haven't seen is a strategic commitment to housing first from health. I think that's as much around, I think, an awareness and a consciousness perspective. But I do think the point that you make around the legislative obligation for departments to actually commit themselves to specific programs within homelessness, I would love to see in the next assembly being kind of introduced pretty quickly. And
Health has such a big role to play. I mean, again, going back several years, I remember the work that Susan Semple at the time was doing with health, with homelessness, and I think she had won Nurse of the Year or something for the work that she had done there. Health is an integral part of all of this. And they after Committee for Communities are probably the next largest body that needs to be involved. So you're saying there, David, that it's not all tying together at the moment. I mean, that's the impression I'm getting.
I think if you hear from ourselves and what our colleagues are saying in housing and homelessness, in the housing executive, is that relationships are excellent, both operationally and increasingly so from a strategic point of view through COVID.
Yeah.
I think now what we have to do is nail down the financial and strategic commitment from health towards homelessness. I think that needs to be underpinned by legislation. And then secondly, I think the budgetary commitment to specific programs is absolutely needed, of which we would say Housing First is one of those key programs. If we look at our experience and in the Republic of Ireland, I think there's about a 60-40 split in terms of the revenue budget between health and local authorities for Housing First. We'd obviously like to see that being reflected, and I know in Scotland as well that there has been specific health commitment from Scotland as well towards Housing First through their National Housing First framework.
David, that's what I was going to ask you next, was around the funding model for this and just currently what you do receive and how that model is worked out. Then do you have to then tender for services from health, or is it or do you receive an allocation from health?
So we have an allocation at the moment from Supporting People for the Housing First programme, but that is for housing related support services. We are funded through PHA in Derry, Londonderry, in terms of the provision of harm reduction services. We utilise that as part of our approach. There has also been a commitment in the city from the trust towards the day centre in Derry, which is in Foylehaven, which has been really, really kind of encouraging as well. But we have not got any, there's no current funding stream that we can tap into specifically for Housing First at the moment.
Okay, that's rather, yeah, that's not good. So the only place really you're getting that health funding then is up, as you say, up in Londonderry, and nowhere else then throughout the province?
Yeah, and that's through the PHA, and that's through the broader harm reduction programme that we're running.
And is there an opportunity for any of the other services you do provide? Because a lot of them are health related. For to put in tenders for any of those, or is
I'm
that
going to
one?
ask Deirdre just to step in on that issue. Deirdre, would you step in on that, please?
Yeah, no problem. We do, Paula, make applications for funding. So we want to take, and we need to take a holistic approach, because as you can see, the model of Housing First is determined on a case management, case coordinated approach. So it's a multi-agency model of support. And in order to deliver that, we enter into partnerships as much as other organisations have the capacity to accept the referrals. So we seek pockets of funding. So at the moment, through our fundraising department, we were able to secure money for a mental health worker, but that's only going to take us for 1 year. And so those small pockets of money introduces a health initiative, if you like, that we have identified for a short period of time, and then you're back to the drawing board again. So that longer core sustainable funding is absolutely critical in order to deliver, health and housing and all of the other supports. And just to say, in the West, at the moment we're working in partnership with the Health Trust in the West, and that's to look at formalising more pathways into statutory services, and that will be helpful. Through the day centre in Derry, we work with the homeless nurse now in the city, and we developed out health initiatives that we found money for through various different sources in order to find those health interventions, and we try to bring our Housing First service users into the day centre to receive that support. But that again is not ideal, because not everybody wants to do that, and they might be further afield than travelling into the city. So yeah, we seek those pockets of funding where we can.
And well done on. I mean, it's just shameful that organisations like yourself, who are doing, a wonderful job, and actually to easing the burden on the statutory sector greatly, are having to scrape around to try and find money for initiatives and for programs, and that certainly goes against. We really haven't progressed. When I think I've been dealing with this issue for the last 11 years, and we haven't progressed greatly when it comes to the funding and a funding strategy around this. And that's most definitely something that hopefully the next Committee for Communities will pick up and run on and demand it.
Well, I think you bring up a really important point around Housing First, because it does offset the use of accident emergency.
Yeah.
It does offset the use of PSNI. So there's actually a cost, and we've done an analysis of this ourselves as part of the pilot program. And it's really important to underline the benefits to the public purse around an investment of this nature.
And we know, because we've heard the stories from various individuals who came and briefed our committee a few weeks ago, what a difference to their life people like you make. It's unbelievable. And some there, for the grace of God goes all. So certainly our government need to invest, and they need to invest heavily, because I say it all the time, it's spend to save, and it's looking beyond next year's budget. It's looking ahead. As if we spend this hike, we'll be looking 10 years time. So I'm behind you 100%. I know I won't be there, but I am. I will still be behind you 100%. And I do.
Before we go, Paul, I just want to say your commitment to homelessness has been kind of invaluable to all of us. So just to say a special thank you from DePaul for that.
No, thank you very much. I'm going to open up to members now who will have some questions for you. I've got Mark Durkin and then Kelly Armstrong. So if we could bring Mark in, please.
Thank you, Chair. And sorry I was late joining the meeting. I was here from the start of this DePaul presentation, though. So thanks to David and Deirdre for that. David, you kind of been saying there, or what you says today is strikingly familiar to a lot that I've been saying for some time now, although you said it much more eloquently. And it's suppose, based on the evidence, whereas mine had been based on impression, idea and anecdote. Just to pull back to one of the things, I didn't get the actual stat, David, but he says providing housing first services, I think was it 40% cheaper?
Yeah, a recent English study has been shown, Mark, that hostel accommodation, the provision of a housing first tenancy costs 40% lower than it does for a conventional temporary accommodation bed, a hostel bed. And 60% lower than a kind of intensive on-site support. So we would operate, for instance, 30 beds in a place called Sundial House in Dublin, which is working for people with complex needs. We've nursing staff on site. We've intensive carers. It's almost like a de facto nursing home. The English study does show that if we can provide a coordinated approach to wraparound services, that it offers a more kind of cost-effective approach to this. And one of the big kind of, I suppose, I think there's a humanitarian perspective to this. You know, look, this is from an organisation that provides over 700 temporary accommodation beds in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, but we're passionately committed to underline that hostels are not the places for people to flourish and to progress. So there's the philosophical point of view in terms of look, let's do our best to minimise the use of temporary accommodation, and that's really, really hard at the moment, particularly when there's increased needs coming forward and we have increasing, I suppose, amount of rough sleeping. But I think going back to Paula's point in terms of the longer term planning point of view, we have to plan ahead of where the housing is coming from and put the investment up front in order for us to be able then to cut back on those temporary accommodation beds. But yes, all of the evidence does suggest that housing first in the longer term provides a better cost-effective approach than temporary accommodation.
Yeah, it's less expensive and more effective. And now that was based, I suppose, on evidence gathered over a couple of years or a number of years, David. But I'm sure it must be difficult for yourselves to look at the money poured in to temporary accommodation over the past couple of years, and I know now it was in response to the COVID pandemic and that, and it's commendable in terms of the approach of getting people off the streets. But if we see the numbers or the demand for temporary accommodation and how it has spiralled in that time, I don't know, would you have a view on? I've stated before that I think they've almost created a market for the provision of temporary accommodation because it's so much more lucrative, or apparently more lucrative.
Well, look, it's a chicken and egg situation, Mark, isn't it? You know, because nobody wants to see anybody kind of rough sleeping, you know, and like we've been part of humanitarian kind of responses to make sure that doesn't occur. And that's why I would go back to the point of that. In order to be able to tackle this, we need upfront investment to create the tenancies in order to then be able to move people from the temporary accommodation into permanent tenancies. You know, there's no other way of doing this. But I think in the longer term, that will create a more kind of a cost-effective approach. I like you, I'm really, really kind of alarmed of what's happened, in the last kind of couple of years in Northern Ireland, over the COVID period, but understand that we have to provide that kind of that temporary accommodation. Ironically, our temporary accommodation beds haven't increased because we can't attract the staff to be able to actually staff units because of the huge pressures on recruitment and retention, and that's another issue that we're dealing with. And you've heard a lot about that.
But then there's more reliance on the private sector to provide temporary accommodation, and that's where that market has been created. I think it's almost a case of if you build it, they will come or they will be sent. Yeah,
and absolutely, you know, and again, I would say, understandably, people have had to, from the housing executive's point of view, I don't want to see anybody on the streets, but we do need to look at the quality of private emergency accommodation, and make sure that they are subject to as robust standards as the voluntary community sector is.
Yeah, the quality of the accommodation and the composition, I suppose, of the tenants as well, because some very difficult situations arrive there where you've people with vulnerabilities all put together without that support network around them, and it can lead to quite, I suppose, a combustible environment in some instances, certainly.
Yeah.
I think, though, you know, it's important to say that what was achieved in the pandemic, you know, and the response that occurred to make sure that nobody was on the street and everyone in approach, whilst it cost a lot of money, the money was found and the will was there. And I think, you know, with the money and the will and, you know, that multi-agency approach to things, what can be achieved in a very short space of time. And it's not an ideal situation. And now we need to think about how we reverse back out of that and get people out of non-standard accommodation into longer term, affordable, suitable accommodation, is the challenge now that we all face. And I think the Housing First model would be, you know, an excellent model to start assessing those with those complex needs that you've mentioned, Mark, that are in maybe the likes of B&Bs and, you know, non-standard and non-regulated accommodation, and a transition for them into the more stable temporary or more stable long-term accommodation, rather than trying to shoehorn them back into maybe supported living accommodation, you know. So I think
don't get me wrong, I certainly welcomed the response and welcomed the will, but I think it's going to be difficult now to put the genie back into the bottle, and the pressure will be on just to keep funding the model that we now seem to have. And, you know, while that's going on, it's difficult enough to get housing first services funded anyway, and has been historically. But whenever so much money's been ploughed in the, I suppose, providing temporary accommodation, there's even less money to invest in models like yours. That is what we need to move us forward and to give people proper support, I suppose, to enable them to get long-term tenancies and some stability in their lives.
And that's why, Mark, I mean, one of the kind of big recommendations that we make is let's cost the implications and consequences of a full rollout of Housing First. We've taken the figure of 1,500 tenancies. Scotland, 3,500 tenancies. I think in England they're doing a similar sort of estimate. If we're able to cost what that looks like, obviously from a capital point of view, there's a number of angles that we need to. This all can't come from social housing. It needs to come as well from the partnerships with the private rental sector. Mm-hmm. But if we were aware of what the cost would be around those 1,500 tenancies, at least then we would be able to, and look, easier said than done coming from somebody from a voluntary community sector background. But I do firmly believe that we need to create, you know, the money up and above the current homelessness input in order to create those 1,500 tenancies. Because otherwise, as you say, we're in this kind of cycle of what do you do with the individuals who are currently within non-standard and private emergency and even hostel accommodation as well.
Yeah, and the current model, in terms of it not it doesn't serve anyone well. It doesn't serve the client or tenant, resident well. It doesn't serve communities well either. I had a guy in with me yesterday, a fella from Belfast. He's been in Derry for about a month in temporary accommodation, where he's been put in alongside people he didn't know, obviously. There's been issues there. He has subsequently fallen foul of his housing officer, who's Belfast-based. That's his fault. But at the same time, when he's been basically locked in a room, or well, not locked, but confined to these quarters in an alien city for a month, he's got grown frustrated, and he ended up being abusive towards his housing officer. And then yesterday he was in my office. He was in a bad way. No one would take him. I ended up running him to the bus depot myself, and he's away back home to his mum, who I don't think that relationship sounds that close either, but that's what he saw yesterday as the only thing that he could do. But just, I suppose, to acknowledge the work that you guys do, and particularly aware of the work that you do up in my neck of the woods, and of the perennial sort of funding battles that you have to have, which is extremely frustrating. It's frustrating for me as an elected representative to get that correspondence from yourselves or your colleagues every turnaround looking for support for this. And I'm sure it's frustrating for you doubly or trebly.
Well, we'll keep the battle going, Mark. I think
you have to send it. And
really
then
grateful for,
yeah, you've to send that correspondence, and then listen to us patting ourselves on the back when you get funded for another year or two.
Yeah.
Do you know what, that cycle has to be broken, and you need to be sort of set on a sustainable and solid foundation. But thank you for the work that you are doing, and hopefully you can get to do more of it.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark. Any other members want to ask a question? Can you please raise your hand? I have Kelly Armstrong who's waiting to come in. If we could bring in Kelly, please.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully my connection is much improved now, and I'm speaking to David and Deirdre without breaking up and sounding like a robot. Just to start off, for both of you, to say thank you very much. I think that one of the things out of the pandemic has shown just how important the community and voluntary sector and the wider housing sector has been to ensuring safety of people in Northern Ireland. And that was my first question, was really to ask you about that partnership working during COVID, that cross-departmental working. Deirdre, as you rightly pointed out, money was found and support was provided. We're now seeing people coming out of that sort of protected period. If there was a couple of key learnings from that, what would, for instance, we're going forward to an election now, there's going to be a negotiation on a programme for government, there will be a housing outcome. In that housing outcome, are there a couple of key learning points that you would like us to really understand that this would be vital going forward?
I'll allow Deirdre to speak around the operational level and the learnings, but for me, will is not enough. I think everybody, there was a national and international emergency around COVID that focused people's minds, where people were fully aware of the consequences if we didn't act. And the remarkable story is that we saved people who used our services their lives, both within the community and within the hospital system. And that's been an incredible achievement. But I think as budgetary pressures grow and the inflationary pressures grow, that commitment can wane. And I really feel that there's absolute need for an underpinning legislative imperative for interdepartmental working. I would love to see Housing First, as it has been by the Scottish Executive, being taken as a central part of the programme for government, to tell you the truth. Because, I think if we can get it to that level, at First Minister and Deputy First Minister level, I think that gives the imperative to drive what Mark and yourselves have been saying in terms of, okay, there's a core government commitment to that. So for me, it is programme for government commitment and underpinning legislative commitment, but also that's not just about participation, that's about budgetary commitment as well.
So if we...
Sorry.
Go on ahead, Deirdre, sorry.
And of the duty on the operations side of things.
Yeah, I mean, where would I start? I think I'll start with our staff. Actually, was our learning, was the resilience and the flexibility and the nimbleness of how, as an organisation, we mobilised ourselves to respond to the pandemic. Because if you're thinking about people in supported accommodation with complex needs, and then you're trying to tell them that they can't go out and we're in lockdown, and how innovative staff had to be, and that wasn't just in DePaul, that was across the voluntary sector. I think the other side of it was really how there is a real willingness among the voluntary and community sector to collaborate and to work together. And what they can achieve together is phenomenal. And I think there was for me, it highlighted how underestimated the professionalism is of the staff within the voluntary sector. And when I say that, I mean, if you compare how the terms and conditions are for staff working in the voluntary sector and those working in the statutory sector, as much as I totally understand the work that the frontline staff did in the statutory sectors is immeasurable. But there's a real inequality in that. And I think, as was said by Paula, we really did step up and I think took a lot of pressure off emergency services and statutory services during the pandemic. We had very few COVID cases across our services. And that was both staff and service users, and that was down to good planning and good systems being in place to protect people. I think the lack of formal pathways and agreements with the statutory sector became very apparent, I think, because we had to, as a sector, we had to look inward and to each other for the support, because the other services were overwhelmed, and we were able to do that. And it was those operational, on the ground relationships that enabled us to do what we did as a sector. But if there had been formalised systems there, that would have been much more helpful. The homeless nursing services, both in Belfast and in Derry, were exceptionally important because we were able to do vaccinations within the day centre in Derry. We were able to bring the services into our services, which was really, really helpful as well. So it also allowed us to examine the need for services to be flexible. Whilst pathways exist, they're too rigid and don't really serve the needs of the client groups that we work with. So there needs to be more flexibility in that, and we need to be able to bring those services to our service users. So those were some of the key points, I think. And there was definitely, through some of the groups that were set up by Homeless Connect, which used to be Council for the Homeless, but now Homeless Connect, brought statutory and voluntary sectors together. And those meetings were really, really vital and important because it was a quick way to share information.
I'd add one more thing, Kelly, just in terms of looking to the future. I think we have to be ready for more shocks. If we look at, depending on what the UK government's approach will be to hosting Ukrainian families in Northern Ireland, is an example. We look at the energy kind of situation that we face, but certainly from our perspective, how we stay resilient as an organisation to deal with, say, for instance, another flip with the COVID kind of situation. I think our readiness and expectation that there will be major shocks going forward and how we do then respond, I think, is another major lesson.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, you just highlighted one of the reasons. Actually, hold on. Has anybody from the department or anybody else asked you to contribute? We all know there's an election coming. We all know that there's an agreed cross-party agreement to a housing outcome in the next programme for government. Has anybody actually sat down? Because I've picked up already their key asks. Housing related support services need to be provided. There needs to be longer term budgeting. There needs to be cross-departmental working, and learning out of COVID has proven that. Has anybody asked you what sort of indicators there could be that would actually affect a real change for something like Housing First, for DePaul, for the people who you support? Has anybody actually started that conversation yet?
Yeah, well, we're part of an interdepartmental group on the homelessness strategy, and ourselves and the Simon community have kind of brought forward the need for a data-driven kind of approach to the evaluation. So we've started those conversations. We met a year and a half ago, well, actually it's probably 2 years ago, slightly before COVID, myself and Jim Dennison with a number of the permanent secretaries around two issues, Housing First, but also as well how data can be used in order to be able to create a more transparent approach to the investment of public money into housing and homelessness. So that conversation has started. We'd want to obviously kind of resume that because let's be honest, so much money is being put into housing and homelessness, and I think there's an obligation and need for us to be able to kind of say, yeah, look, it is having an effective perspective here. So again, I think as part of high level kind of commitments, that data driven approach, and I'd like to see that specifically obviously linked to the regional rollout of then Housing First and housing led approaches.
And my final sort of questions. We have an ageing society. I'm thinking long term moving forward. We have an ageing society now, and I know a lot of the MLAs in the call and yourselves will understand this one. Because of bedroom tax, now we know the bedroom tax, we've got that sorted for Northern Ireland, but there's a lot of pressure put on older people, and we have an ageing society coming forward where they're living in family homes, and they do feel under pressure because of the type of words used about bedroom tax and, you know, having spare homes, that those older people, to be honest, maybe for the first time, they've maybe been in housing property for their lives, they're on housing benefit, they're terrified that that will stop because there could be an additional amount of pension credit or carers uplift that comes along, pushes them above the qualifying limits, and all of a sudden they're paying rent and they can't afford it. And there's another aspect on housing stress that's coming forward. On that long-term sort of thinking, is there anything that's being considered by the department, by yourselves, by anybody that looks, you know, at those demographics coming forward? Because you're right, David, we're going to have the crisis pieces that we need to deal with, and I think COVID has shown we can do that. But the long-term strategy has me a bit concerned that we're so busy trying to deal with the emergencies that long-term we're maybe, am I right in thinking that we don't have time, or you guys don't have time to look 5, 10 years, 20 years ahead?
I think the big, so it's not an area of expertise for us on the older person's point of view, so I just would want to say that from the outset. But if we look at our chronic complex needs group, you know, our figures show that 40 to 50% of them do end up in the private emergency kind of sector. And my kind of big fear is and focus on affordability of the private rented sector for people with complex needs once they reach kind of 65, you know, and even the wider group within the private rented sector, you know, around will pensions cover rents, you know, as supply maybe continues to diminish, you know, through aging stock or through a constriction of the private rented sector. So it's certainly something that we've put forward as part of our housing supply submission. But it's not an area of expertise for us, Kelly. So just to say that.
No, I'm even thinking about. I had a question into the department about how many housing executive houses are over 40 years old and therefore will be needing retrofitting. And if you imagine if those houses are having to be retrofitted, there's a new heating system or something to be put in, then people will have to be put out to stay somewhere while that's happening. I don't think there's enough mobile caravans in the countryside to deal with that number of people all at once. It'll be over a 10-year period, of course. But no, it is a pressurised time. But I think COVID has identified just how flexible, as Deirdre was talking about, that the sector can be if it is invested in properly and is enabled to do that. So if we can do it once, why can't we keep doing it? But thank you so much for the work, and for if you pass through to the staff the work that they have done. It's often hidden and not seen because it was the health crisis. But I could not believe when we were hearing, how many people were in temporary accommodation and safe. And as you say, lives were saved during COVID because of the work of your staff. It is amazing. Thank you very much. And I just say, Deirdre, I worked in the community and voluntary sector for far too long before I became to be an MLA. And the pay, I used to bug me all the time. Pay for people in the statutory sector compared to us knocking our pants in was incredible. It would be lovely that social value being built into all grants and contracts moving forward, so that the value that's being, the added value that's given by you guys is at last recognised. Yeah. But no, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Oh, Kelly, thank you very much. Ciara Ferguson has her hand up to come in, so can we bring Ciara in, please?
Yeah. Thank you, Deirdre and David. No, I'll not repeat any other questions. Kind of key for me, obviously, over the years I've been off visiting your premises and speaking through a range of consultations with individuals that have benefited from your service, and there's always been fantastic atmosphere there, and the tenants have been in great form and liaison and being involved in the study and a range of consultations. One of the key things for me, obviously, is looking at the solution focused, and obviously in the Northwest with yourselves there has been real good collaboration, and that's been strengthened through COVID. And obviously you are recommending around the multidisciplinary teams, and it's great that there is that interdepartmental group at that high level. Is there any work, or have you any thoughts on how these multidisciplinary teams could evolve and could engage at a local level? Obviously, with regards to children and young people, I think there's a real good structure there regarding the children and young people, the Western Outcomes Group, the locality planning group, you have your family support hubs, and that has really brought together the collaboration and supporting our children and young people. So I'm thinking, is there any thoughts been given to how we can strengthen the multidisciplinary working across departments at a local level? Thank you.
Certainly, I think the introduction of the Health Hub in Belfast has been an operational demonstration of really effective interdepartmental working, where health have got involved from homeless services. Paula talked about Susan earlier on. In the Northwest, we'd like to see a replication of that. We're very much subscribed to the whole principle of health inclusion, coming from a principle of that people who are marginalised and on the extremes of society, and who suffer the consequences, probably mostly of all of our population of health-related issues, are taken forward in a health inclusion perspective. So I think teams that are structured with that particular philosophy and approach, both specific teams for homelessness, the whole area of discharge planning from hospitals and protocols is key, for instance. Absolutely key. People being discharged in a really structured manner. And I think that whole kind of perspective of a health inclusion approach that takes in those specific considerations is kind of critical, and funding streams that go kind of alongside that as well. Deirdre, do you want to come in on that, because you're on the ground kind of delivering?
Ciara, it's a really good question, actually, because there's so many things that could be done, but as David has articulated, it's really about the formalisation of those partnerships. But one of the things that has occurred recently, you'll know about the ICS groups or forums that set up the integrated care system. and we did a presentation in the West recently. I'm not sure, you may actually have been at that, but it was mostly GPs and medical professions that were there, and we presented on the services that we provide, and I think it was an eye-opener for those in attendance. We did a number of case studies that demonstrated how many hoops that has to be jumped through in order to get somebody the support and the care that they need, particularly those with mental health issues, because there's always a challenge of, is it a mental health issue or is it an addiction issue? And for us, it's the person. That it's not one or the other that define them, it's the person, and it's what's the right service to support them. So there was definitely an appetite at that meeting for GPs to further analyse, I guess, how they engage with individuals with complex needs, and then what the referral pathway is. So as David said, a hospital discharge process is absolutely essential, because just to give a very quick example, we could have somebody that presents to A&E, very complex needs, and they have a major health issue, but they don't have the ability for the patients to sit and wait for 4 or 5 or 6 hours in A&E, and they leave without treatment. And there isn't anything that flags up to any agency that's involved to say that that individual has just walked out, but they've walked out with a major health issue as well as their complex need, and then that gets greater, and then it's a more intense level of treatment that's required then by the time they finally do get treated. So I think some of the consultations that's occurring at the moment, for example, through this ICS forums, is really important that there are actions coming out of that actually make real long-term change and commitment, and formalise pathways that are appropriate to our service user needs. I think that's definitely going to be critical for health. And then I think not overlooking the criminal justice system either. So we need to think about people who are being released from prison, and what interventions. We work very closely through Housing First with the prison services. We endeavour to go in and build a relationship with the individual, and assess what their needs are, and we seek to have housing options for them when they're released, so that they're not actually going into the homeless cycle. They're actually going into a more longer term permanent accommodation where possible. And we have found that the individuals where that happens are less likely to reoffend. So, I mean, that investment in having maybe step down units for people coming out of prison, and at the moment we're very much looking at women leaving prison in particular, and what that pathway should look like. So we definitely need to have more engagement with the criminal justice system as well, so that we have women and other offenders coming out of prison in a planned way, because sometimes we get a phone call on Friday evening to say, can you help somebody? They're being released from prison. There's the money to get the bus to go into Belfast, but what happens after that? Well, do you know what? Maybe 3 square meals a day and a roof over your head is enough incentive to reoffend and find yourself back into that more secure environment. So we definitely need to work more closely with criminal justice, and there needs to be definitely formalised agreements with that. You're on mute, Ciara.
No, thank you. You know, it's always been a dilemma because you're operating across a lot of departments, a lot of structures, even at a local community level, where we had community safety partnerships, we had health partnerships, with early intervention partnerships, and overall, we need it all to be together because it's about the person, and it's about, and there's always a range of needs to assist, and it's a lot of work, and for staff, and you need additional staff and time, and so it's trying to, how can we improve upon that? Because as you mentioned earlier, the will is there with the partners, and how can we more effectively use our resources as a collective, as a wraparound service, to support each other to do the best by that individual who requires a need. So it's just the thought process of how we can improve upon the structures, because I think the resources and the will is there, but how we can use all our time more effectively and our resources more effectively and moving forward, which would then support the organisations that are doing such vital services and also the staff as well, and most and foremost those most in need. How can we all work more collaboratively together? But once again, thank you very much for your presentation. Really appreciate it, and I know the people on the city up there really appreciate the services that you require, and appreciate the collaboration that you are currently doing with justice and health and housing. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ciara. And we'll be celebrating 20 years of Foyle Haven in May.
Brilliant,
So
brilliant.
Welcome to join us.
Very good.
You'll all get an invite to that. So
yeah,
brilliant. Thank you.
Happy anniversary. Good stuff. Thank you, Ciara. There's no other member has indicated they want to ask anything further, so I just want to say a final thank you then to yourselves, to David and to Deirdre. I'm delighted that we were able to get you here to brief the committee on our very last meeting, just to keep the issues live and just to remind everybody out there just what an important issue this is, and more needs to be done. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you.
well, thank you, and thanks to the members' committee commitment to this, and Paula, to reiterate our thanks to you for all that you've done. And you're always welcome down in Stella if you want to pop in. All right.
I had a great day there. I
Okay.
remember it well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so
very
much.
much.
All right.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks, we're going to move on then to agenda item 7, which is a raised briefing on rural and urban community networks. Members, you'll find the research paper at 116. Members, sadly, we were due to get briefed on this paper today, but due to an extensive number, which you will see coming up, of SL1s and SRs brought forward by the department this week, as late as yesterday, we've had to cancel this briefing to ensure we had time to consider all the legislation we have in front of us. So can we just send our apologies to our researcher, Stephen Orme, for the late notice on this yesterday, and thank him again for a very informative paper. So thank you for that. Kelly, did you want to come in there?
Sorry, Chair, just to say, Chair, we have been blessed by fantastic researchers throughout this period. Stephen, Eleanor, dear love Eleanor, just to pass on our thanks. I know they're not here with us today, but what would we do without them?
No, I quite agree with you. They've been brilliant, so they have, and at very short notice at time getting us information. So yeah, please, yeah, and I'll say that to Janice as well, who knows them very well. If you could pass on our thanks to them. So members, we, as I said to you, we have a massive list. We have 6 SLs and 19 SRs, and every one of those statutory rules needs to be read in to the minutes. So what I'm going to propose at this stage is that we take a short comfort break, and what I am going to say to you as well, I need you all back. I know some of you might need to go to the chamber at some stage, but we can't pass, or we can't without a quorum, we are unable to pass any of these SLs and SRs today. So just please stay with us and come back. Don't leave us. So I'm going to just suggest a 10-minute break, which will allow me to go make my mum a cup of tea as well. So if we could come back here at 11:15 sharp, and we'll kick off. And I mean, it's going to take probably an hour anyway to get through all of the legislation. So 11:15 sharp, members. Thank you. Okay, folks, I've been told that we're ready to start again. So if members can show themselves, you're all showing up on my screen, which is good. Just bear with me till I get my list up beside me. Yeah. So with us at this stage, we have Ciara Ferguson, Mark Durkin, Vice Chair Kelly Armstrong, Paul Frew, Ashleen Riley, and Anya Murphy. So brilliant that you are all here. So I'll try and get through these, and just remind members that Action Mental Health are briefing us after this on issues around the ESF funding and the way forward. So if members will stay on for that after. So I'm going to move you straight on to then, and you are all coming into the spotlight so we can hear you all now. So just to remind you, if you're having any conversations with anybody, we can hear you. So agenda item 9, which is SL1, the draft Universal Credit Welfare Supplementary Payment Regulations Northern Ireland 2022. Members, we will now be considering 6 SLs and 19 SRs, so please bear with me as we go through these. Quite a number of these have had to be tabled since the pack went out on Monday. So a copy of this SL1 is at page 133. The proposed rule is subject to draft affirmative procedure and will make provision for welfare supplementary payments for people currently in receipt of universal credit and for those who move to universal credit in the future. Again, can I then start by asking members any comments, or are they content for the department to proceed to make the rule?
Content.
Content. Thank you very much. Agenda item 10, SL1, the Draft Welfare Supplementary Payments Amendment Number 2 Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find a copy of this SL1 at page 137. The Department is proposing to make further amendments to provide for the proper administration of the welfare mitigation schemes. The proposed rule is subject to the draft affirmative procedure. It will affect the mitigation payments for the time limiting of contribution-based employment and support allowance and also the disability living allowance to personal independence payment reassessment, including the loss of carer payments and disability premiums. Again, members, any comments? Are you content for the department to proceed to make the rule?
Content.
Thank you. Thank you. Tabled SL1, the Social Fund Child Funeral Fund Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. Copy of this SL1 is in your tabled papers at page 55. The proposed rule will be subject to the negative resolution procedure and will provide a one-off lump sum payment of £3,056 to cover the cost of a basic funeral, as outlined in the Sun Life Cost of Dying 22 report, in the event of the death of a child up to the age of 18 and stillborn babies born after 24 weeks. Families will have the choice to receive the payment or for it to be paid directly to the funeral directors or third parties. The one-off lump sum payment will not be means tested and shall be disregarded for Social Security benefit purposes. Again, members, any comments? Are you content for the department to proceed to make the rule?
Content.
Good stuff, thank you. We'll move on then to another tabled SL1, the Occupational Pension Schemes Collective Money Purchase Schemes Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this SL1 in your table papers at page 49. The proposed rule is subject to the confirmatory procedure and sets out the authorisation and supervisory regime for collective money purchase schemes under Part 2 of the Pension Schemes Act 2021. Again, members, any comments? Are you content for the department to proceed to make the rule?
Content.
Thank you. Thank you. Another tabled SL1 is the Draft Local Government Pension Scheme Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. Members, you'll find a copy of this SL1 in your table papers at page 25. The proposed rule is subject to the negative resolution procedure and contains amendments to cover both the changes required by an employment tribunal ruling in relation to survivor benefits and a number of technical amendments and minor policy updates. Members, any comments? Are you content for the department to proceed to make the rule?
Content.
Content, thank you. Content. Thank you. Another tabled SL1, the Occupational Pension Schemes, Collective Money Purchase Schemes, Modifications and Consequential and Miscellaneous Amendments Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this SL1 in your tabled papers at page 44. The proposed rule is subject to the negative resolution procedure and will amend existing legislation in consequence of Part 2 of the Pension Schemes Act 2021 and the authorisation and supervisory regime for collective money purchase schemes set out in Occupational Pension Schemes Collective Money Purchase Schemes Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. Again, members, any comments? Or are you content for the department to proceed to make the rule?
Content.
Good stuff. Thank you. We're going to now move on to some statutory rules. So if we can turn then to agenda item 11, which is SR 2022-83, the Occupational Pension Schemes, Charges and Governance Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find a copy of the rule at page 144 of your pack. Can I then ask if members have any objections to the rule?
No.
Okay, then I'll put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-83, the Occupational Pension Schemes, Charges and Governance Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. We'll move on then to agenda item 12, which is SR 2022-84, the Social Security Industrial Injuries Prescribed Diseases Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find a copy of this rule at page 192 of your pack. Again, members, any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Okay, thank you. I will then put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-84, the Social Security Industrial Injuries Prescribed Diseases Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Moving on to agenda item 13, SR 22-85, the Licensing Notice Relating to Local Producers Licence Regulations. You'll find a copy of this rule at page 201. Again, members, any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Thank you. I then put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-85, the Licensing Notice Relating to Local Producers Licence Regulations, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Moving on then to agenda item 14 SR 2022-86, the Social Security Revaluation of Earnings Factor Order, Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this at page 212 of your packs. Members, any objections to this rule?
No.
Good stuff.
No.
I'll put the following then, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-86, the Social Security Revaluation of Earnings Factors Order, Northern Ireland 2022, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Agenda item 15, SR 2022-87, the Occupational Pension Schemes, Schemes that were contracted out Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this at page 222 of your packs. Can I ask members, have you any objections to this rule?
No.
Okay.
No.
Then I'll put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 22-87, the Occupational Pension Schemes, Schemes that were contracted out Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Moving on then to agenda item 16, SR 2022-88, the Energy Payment Support Scheme Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this at page 228 of your pack. Can I then ask, have members any objections to the rule?
No.
Nope, thank you. I'll then put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-88, the Energy Payment Support Scheme Amendment Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022, and subject to the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Then we'll move on to agenda item 17, SR 2022-98, the Occupational Pension Schemes Fraud Compensation Levy, Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this at page 235 of your pack. Again, members, any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Thank you. I'll put the following then, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-98, the Occupational Pension Schemes Fraud Compensation Levy, Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2022, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Then we'll move to agenda item 18, which is SR 2022-99, the Registration of Clubs Accounts Regulations Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this rule at page 242 of your pack. Can I then ask, have members any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-99, the Registration of Clubs Accounts Regulations Northern Ireland 2022, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objections to the rule. Moving on to agenda item 19, SR 2022-111, the Guaranteed Minimum Pensions Increase Order Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this at page 261. Again, members, any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Okay, then I'll put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-111, the Guaranteed Minimum Pensions Increase Order Northern Ireland 2022, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objections to the rule. Moving on to agenda item 20, SR 22-115, the Occupational and Personal Pension Schemes Disclosure of Information, Requirements to Refer Members to Guidance, etc., Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this at 268 of your pack. Any objections to the rules, member, or to the rule?
No.
Okay, and my dog's about to start barking, so I'll put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-115, the Occupational and Personal Pension Schemes Disclosure of Information, Requirements to Refer Members to Guidance, etc., Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2022, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objections to the rule. Then we'll move to agenda item 21, SR 2022-120, the Social Security Medical Evidence and Statutory Sick Pay Medical Evidence Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this at page 315. Can I then ask if members have any objections to the rule?
No.
No objections?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'll put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-120, the Social Security Medical Evidence and Statutory Sick Pay Medical Evidence Amendment Regulations Northern Ireland 2022, and subject to the report of Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. We'll then go to agenda item 22, SR 2022-121, the Occupational Pension Schemes Master Trust Regulations Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this at page 326. Can I ask members, have you any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Thank you. I'll then put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-121, the Occupational Pension Schemes Master Trust Regulations Northern Ireland 2022, and recommends that it is confirmed by the Assembly. Moving on then to tabled SRs. So you've got SR 2022-130, Coronavirus Act. Bear with me. I am just going to shut the door because I've got a barking dog now. Bear with me. Okay, sorry about that. And I'll have forgotten where I'm supposed to be. Yeah, tabled SR. So SR 2022-130, Coronavirus Act 2020, extension of modifications of requirements regarding. No, have I read that one? Someone tell me.
What number's the end of that one again?
2022-130.
I thought the last one we did was.
No, no need to
no
read
need to read, yeah.
it. I'm being told. So I've already done that one. Okay, so I'll move on then. Yeah. Yeah, I have. Hold on. No, I haven't read that.
I thought the last one was 24.
Yeah, no, you're right, because I'm just reading it now. So, no, I haven't read that one. So, tabled SR 2022-130, Coronavirus Act 2020, extension of modifications of requirements regarding medical certificates for cremations order, Northern Ireland 2022. You'll find this in your table papers at page 6. So, can I ask members if you have any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Thank you. I'll put the following then, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-130, Coronavirus Act 2020, extension of modifications of requirements regarding medical certificates for cremations order Northern Ireland 2022, and recommends that it is confirmed by the Assembly. Moving on then to SR 2022-137, the mesothelioma lump sum payments, conditions and amounts amendment regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. Members, you'll find a copy of this at your table papers at page 60. I have to say I'll not miss not having to say mesothelioma. Can I ask members, have you any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Okay, I'll put the following then, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-137, the mesothelioma lump sum payments, conditions and amounts amendment regulations, Northern Ireland 2022, and recommends that it is confirmed by the Assembly. Then another tabled SR 2022-142, the Licensing and Registration of Clubs Amendment Act, Northern Ireland 2021, Consequential Provision Regulations 2022. You'll find this rule in your table papers at page 69. Can I ask members any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Okay, then I'll put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-142, the Licensing and Registration of Clubs Amendment Act, Northern Ireland 2021, Consequential Provision, Regulations 2022, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objections to the rule. Then we'll go to tabled SR, which is SR 2022-143. The Social Security Benefits Operating Order, Northern Ireland 2022. Again, members, you'll find this in your table papers at pages 71. Members, any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Okay, I'll put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-143, the Social Security Benefits Operating Order, Northern Ireland 2022, and recommends that it is confirmed by the Assembly. Then another tabled SR 2022-144, the Social Security Benefits Operating Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022. A copy of this rule is in your table papers at pages 131. Can I then ask members, have you any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Thank you. I'll put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-144, the Social Security Benefits Operating Regulations, Northern Ireland 2022, and recommends that it is confirmed by the Assembly. Then we'll go to tabled SR 2022-149, Social Security Habitual Residence and Past Presence Amendment Regulations. You'll find a copy of this rule in your table papers at page 141. Members, any objections to the rule?
No.
Thank you. Then I'll put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-149, Social Security Habitual Residence and Past Presence Amendment Regulations, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objection to the rule. Then we'll go to another tabled SR, which is SR 2022-151, Coronavirus Act 2020, extension of provisions relating to statutory sick pay order. Members, a copy of the rule is in your tabled papers at page 154. Again, members, any objections to the rule?
No.
No.
Thank you. Then I'll put the following, that the Committee for Communities has considered SR 2022-151, Coronavirus Act 2020, extension of provisions relating to statutory sick pay order, and subject to the report of the Examiner of Statutory Rules, has no objections to the rule. Then we're going to go to a tabled item, which is the Disposable of Document Order 1925 Newry, Mourne and Down District Council Retention and Disposal Scheme. Members, you'll find this item at page 162 of your tabled papers. These schedules are required to be laid before the Assembly under Section 8.2 of the Public Records Act Northern Ireland 1923 and in accordance with the rules of the Disposable of Documents Order 1925 by the Public Records Office of Northern Ireland. They are subject to a negative resolution procedure. If the committee or any member objects to the disposal of any document on the schedules, we can pray against it by submitting a motion for plenary debate to require preservation of any scheduled record. If no motion to preserve is made within the statutory period, the scheduled disposals will be implemented. Members, have you any objections or are you content with the schedules?
Chair, can I just ask, the current legislation that's going through on historical documents, albeit with respect to a different matter, does it have any implication on this?
My answer would be I don't know, but I can ask Rachel to bring in Janice. She may not know the answer to that either, but we can certainly get that answer. Janice is on mute. If you can unmute yourself, Janice. Go ahead.
Apologies. No, apologies. I don't know the answer to that. We'd have to look into that. But as I said, any individual member, obviously the statutory period will now carry forward into the new mandate. So any individual member in the new mandate, can deal with it then, or the new committee can deal with it then.
Okay, members, is that clarified that for you?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so then can I just then ask if we're content with the schedules?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. We have whizzed through that. That was fabulous. Well done, folks. I'm going to move then to agenda item 23, which is correspondence. Members, the correspondence memo is at page 375. I want to draw your attention to a tabled item, which is SR 2022 number 132. The Welfare Reform Northern Ireland Order 2015 commencement number 16 and commencement number 8, 13 and 14 and transitional and transitory provisions amendment order Northern Ireland 2022. The commencement order will allow universal credit to be claimed by everyone, including a type of claimant known as a frontier worker. That is a person who works in Northern Ireland but does not live in GB or NI. The order is for noting only. Members okay with that? And just then in relation to any other items of correspondence, have you any comments or are you content to note the memo as drafted?
Content.
Good stuff. All right. Well, that is that part finished. So I am going to now go back because I see David Babington from Action Mental Health is with us. So if you just bear with me, I try and find my page number. I think it's page 10 on my notes. Yeah, okay. So we're going to move back. And thank you, everybody, for staying on and getting through all of that. Just something that we have to do. So well done, folks. So as I said to you, we still have one more briefing, and that is from Action Mental Health. So can I then welcome David Babington to our meeting this morning? David, you're very welcome. I haven't seen you in a little while since my time back on Health Committee all those years, but really, really good to have you with us today. You're our last briefing session of the mandate. So you're very welcome, David. I'm going to hand over to yourself.
Great. Thank you, Paula. Hopefully you can hear me all right.
I can indeed, yes.
Great. Well, hopefully you're keeping the best to last. How about that? Well, good morning, Paula, and committee members. And just look, thank you for the opportunity to raise the issue of post-ESF support to our communities. As you can see, my name is David Babington. I'm Chief Executive of Action Mental Health. And all I want to do is just highlight some points to add to the written brief, which I know you've already got, and then I'd be very happy to take some questions. As you can see, Action Mental Health has delivered ESF programs for about 20 years. But today, I suppose I'm really speaking on behalf of the other 51 providers who deliver over 70 programs to support under ESF. About 12 of those projects receive funds directly from Department for Communities as match funding, and some others bid for match funding from councils. But the core of all our work effectively falls under the remit of communities in terms of combating poverty, delivering social inclusion by reducing economic activity, and to increase the skills base of those currently the workforce seeking employment. And I would indicate and highlight there are many other outcomes as well, such as improvement in well-being and an increase in coping skills and resilience, which gives people the confidence to really just to lead independent lives. So essentially what I need to do is really, what I'd like to do is to highlight that my belief is there's no policy response from Northern Ireland to the impending loss of ESF support. There is hope. I believe an over-optimistic hope that the UK Shared Prosperity Fund run from Westminster will deliver the support required. And it's becoming clearer as time goes on, it won't. And certainly not the gap in support that will be left for the 22 disability providers who support people furthest from the workplace. And indeed, AMH is one of those. And I don't know if you're aware, but on the 2nd of February, there was a pre-launch guidance, as they call it, for the UK Shared Prosperity Fund. It basically gave, I think, no grounds for confidence that it will fill the gap for specialist support, which is required for clients on those programs. In Action Mental Health's case, we've got people who have significant mental health issues, such as schizophrenia, psychosis, addictions issues, dual diagnosis, and dealing with suicidal ideation. And, we know how to work with them. And we have had great success over the years in achieving outcomes, indeed outcomes which were highlighted by the EU as best practice. But there's nothing in the current proposal through UK Shared Prosperity Fund to give confidence these kind of issues will be addressed. And in terms of disability here in Northern Ireland, there's no current disability strategy in place, although one is being developed along with DFC social inclusion strategies. However, with, of course, the dissolution of the Assembly this week, there's no indication when the strategy will be agreed and implemented. So it's going to be too late anyway. There was a disability employment strategy, which ran from 2015 to 2020. However, the replacement strategy is still at development stage, and it could be this autumn before it even goes out to consultation. I mean, even the recently convened Disability Stakeholder Forum last year met on only one occasion, with the next meeting scheduled for next week. So, but all this ongoing work is all very
David has frozen on my screen. I don't know if he's frozen on anybody else's screens. If somebody can pop in chat and let me know. Yeah, Janice is saying frozen also. Okay. I don't know, David, can you hear me? Oh, we'll maybe wait on David coming back in again. Just bear with us, folks. It was all going so well. So there you go. John said he's trying to come in again. Bear with us. Remember to just hang fire. Okay, Sean's suggesting that we maybe just again take another short break till we get David back on again. So what time are we at? Yeah, we'll take a 5-minute break again and allow David to get on. So back again at 11:50 sharp, members. Okay? That sound okay? All right. Thank you. Okay, I think we're back again. If I could ask members, I'm nearly certain we're back. If somebody lets me know if they can hear me, that would do well. David, can you hear me all right? Good to go. I'd have just got the message to say we're good to go. All right, David, welcome back. Apologies about that. We seem to have lost you. Yeah, great, this whole virtual stuff, isn't it? So, if you can remember where you left off, if you want to pick up from there, David, that'd be great.
That's no problem at all. I hope I'm coming through loud and clear now.
You are indeed.
Was that just me that dropped, or was it everyone?
No, it's just you froze and then dropped off, but it's okay. It happens. So
really, I do apologise. It's never happened before. Sorry about that. Just to summarise, just where I was talking about various strategies in the Department for Communities, and basically saying that my understanding is, for all the good work that's been done, it's just going to be too late in terms of the needs of all our clients and communities. I suppose the big thing is looking at the wider context. Much of the difficulty for Northern Ireland to get its head around post-ESF support is that it requires cross-departmental working. Current support delivers jointly funded outcomes across the Department for Economy, Department for Health, Department for Justice, Department for Community, but no one department is taking responsibility. I know the Department for Finance is aware of the issue and they've been involved, but there's no sense that anyone is really prepared to provide any clear leadership. So certainly for our part, with colleagues in NICFA, NIUSC and various other partners, I've been engaging myself, and they have, with politicians and officials, and will continue to do so. But I really need to highlight that in 6 months' time, my staff and me, we need to talk to our vulnerable. In AMH, we've got 1,100 clients, just our organisation, about the possible end of the programme. And no one can give me reassurance of where they'll go and who will support them. These people are highly vulnerable people, probably people I expect you see coming into your constituency offices. And they and their carers and families will need to be prepared for the future. But the same is across the other providers. I mean, when you're talking about the total amount, we're talking about 11,726 to be precise. So, answers are required rapidly. So, and can I just highlight that many of these clients are those who have had the hardest time during COVID, facing isolation, financial hardship, that the rest of us may not have had to face quite so badly. And I know that because of my staff and the sector supporting them, that these people throughout COVID, we never closed down completely. We couldn't, given the nature of our clients. And some were suicidal, had severe mental health issues. You can imagine they can't be left isolated. But 2 years ago, within days, we'd switched to delivery of a hybrid solution with some face-to-face engagement. And on top of that impact of COVID, COVID is still here as well. Out of that, of course, what we all know about is the massive concern that these thousands of clients are now facing a cost of living crisis. And regardless of the Chancellor's spring statement, a 1 year estimate is a rise of £1,300 in fuel bills. Across the UK, it's something like 10 million possibly in fuel poverty, with absolute poverty issues rising in the future. And food banks, as we know here locally, they're oversubscribed, and debt agencies do not have further tools to support people. So just in summary, what am I asking for? Why am I here? Well, I'm just trying to highlight that there's a lot of uncertainty. No one has really gripped this and got control and is showing leadership. My understanding from where we are now, given we're months away from needing a decision, is we need some interim program, some transition period, ideally for a number of years, and maybe that's being too optimistic, to give us some space to think through what is going to happen. I appreciate we've had COVID, we've got political instability as well. Those have been distractions, but at least, we can't ensure that, the most vulnerable are deserted. That'd be really shameful in the middle of the cost of living crisis as well. So I think what I'm asking for is clarity on how support through some sort of successor program will be managed and delivered. And you know what? It requires strong leadership. And I would ask, the committee and members to endorse and support this approach and do whatever they can to address these really important issues. So I just conclude there. I hope that's okay.
No, thank you, David. Thank you for your time today. And I think, again, a really important witness session for us to end this session on, this mandate on. It is an issue that this committee has highlighted time and time again. And I know myself, along with various members, have asked the questions at question time of the Finance Minister and also of the Communities Minister, just about how these programmes are going to go forward. We've had briefings around this from various parties over the last 2 years, and they've said the same thing, that it's another cliff edge, I suppose we could say, where you've dedicated staff, you have programs in place, never mind the clients and that vast amount of people that need the help. And for the worry I know, which was highlighted to us probably about this time last year, was the loss of those programs and those staff, and how do you start that up again when some of those things have taken years to hone and to become the exemplar of how to do things. So it is they're in a pretty sad state of affairs that we're sitting here now, and there's nothing concrete from the Shared Prosperity Fund to say how this is going to go forward. I do know that the Minister of Finance has taken the lead on this, and he has, I do know through correspondence, both personally and through this committee. It is disappointing, though, as you say, that there hasn't been some more or better, not some more, but certainly better cross-departmental working on taking this forward, because yet again, it's something else yet again that is cross-departmental, and we all know when something is cross-departmental, no one wants to take ownership or responsibility of it, but that it's simply not good enough when we know that in a very short period of time, we're going to be letting down, as you say, some of the very most vulnerable within our community. And I know we're end of mandate and this is our very last meeting, but I do think this is something that we can, as a committee, put something in writing and send it off to the Minister for Finance and the other departments as well, for the next committee. Whenever it starts up again to pick up the ground running. It's disappointing as well. You'd mentioned there about, we're all very disappointed with the social strategies and the fact that we haven't had any of those come in front of us whenever we've been asking for them for the last 2 years. I know Kelly Armstrong certainly has been very vocal around the disability strategy, but you'd said there, David, what has the level of on that? What is the level of co-production and co-working been around these issues?
Yeah, well, I suppose, there has been some. I can't deny that there has been some, but there was the forum that was set up, and we had, the Disability Stakeholder Forum. It was set up last year. It met on one occasion. I think it's October last year, and there's another meeting next month. But it's that's for 5 or 6 months between, and there hasn't been that much engagement, and I'm not sure, to be honest, I'm not sure how much is really being taken on board about what is said in those meetings anyway. Now, look, I appreciate there's lots of other distractions and COVID, etc., but these things are really important, particularly with, as you've said, the cliff edge is coming. The problem is everyone thinks the cliff edge, it's this time next year. But we can't just suddenly say the 31st March, by the way, that's the end of it. These are vulnerable people who are some are suicidal. So how do you tell them one day, actually, that's the end of it, and sorry, we're off? We have to, if the programs are going to close, we have to, many months in advance, get them working, make them sure aware what's happening, where they got support, where they're going to alternative. Go to the trust and whatever, the health trust as well, or go to the FCs. What are you providing? What are the support? I mean, just the fact there's nothing there is really going to build up a head of steam in coming months, and something that someone needs to get control of it and say what is going to happen. And I say everyone keeps on ducking and diving, so it's 12 months off, whatever. But seriously, we're talking in months here that something needs to be done.
And we know that there isn't the structures and the pathways in place to lead people on. We'd heard recently from Leonard Cheshire about their brain injury side, and and there aren't the structures in place or those pathways to enable people to continue to lead life as full as possible. They're not there anyway. So without the likes of yourselves and others within your sector, people are left with absolutely nothing, which simply is not good enough. And again, talking about staff as well, if staff know that their program is about to finish in whatever month's time, we're all human beings. We all have mortgages to pay. We all have bills to pay. So therefore, we're going to go and look for something different and do. So that's hard to retain staff as well.
I mean, you'll be aware that recruitment and retention of staff at the moment is the worst it's ever been. Certainly, retention of staff is very, very difficult. I know this across the piece in the sector, and some organisations are much worse than us. But trying to retain staff is difficult in the first place. You then add this on top of that. Then, as you say, and you suggest that they may start drifting away, understandably. So there's that added issue as well. But I think particularly the new thing most recently is the cost of living as well. That's what I'm really worried about for our clients particularly. Already they've got concerns, already they're interviewed. You then add this on top of that as well. I mean, who's going to support them and help them through all of that? And another statement from yesterday, from what I can see, is going to help anyone. So, well, not anyone significantly, the people who we're dealing with, and these are they are the people who will crawl into your constituency offices, in dire need of help. And I know, we sometimes cross the phone. We refer them to you, you refer them to us. We work very well, but they need support, they need help, and there's nothing definite about it.
No, thank you. Members, if anybody wants to ask anything, can they please raise their hands? Nobody has raised their hands at this stage. I know that some of you are still on the call. You should be still on the call. It just makes things difficult when we're not all in a room and we're doing this virtually. So I'll just give it another moment to see if anybody wants to come in.
I do appreciate, Chair, that you are aware of the issue and your members are as well. I thought just because you were coming to the end of the mandate, it's just important to draw a line and say, look, seriously, we cannot wait for another year for this. It's within months. So the new committee, as they come up, they've got to pick this up and get running with it and really get a grip of it. And whether there's some sort of a cross-committee working group that come together or somewhere to deal with it, because it is cross-departmental, that somehow we get some cross-departmental working, which I know is always very difficult. But now's the time to step up and see if we can do it.
And again, we were discussing earlier around homelessness in a previous evidence session this morning, and about the need for having that champion someone within housing, the way we have a mental health champion. We need to have, for all of our social strategies, there needs to be someone there actually pushing them.
Yes.
Because again, and I know that, you become cynical when you've been working, and I'm sure you're quite the same, David. You do become cynical, and you think when things are cross-departmental, no one really wants to take the lead or take charge of them and believe it's someone else's job.
Yes.
And that just cannot continue. It can't continue any longer.
No.
I see Mark has his hand up. Can we bring Mark Durkin in, please?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, David, for your presentation. And nearly says for coming in. You probably wish you had came in. I wish I had. And I'm amazed that's the first time that something like that's happened to you in terms of dropping off. It happens at least one of us every single week. Come here, David. The question I was going to ask, it's back to the ESF and I suppose the jeopardy, without wanting to, I suppose, cause undue alarm, but the jeopardy that puts some of your services in, it definitely puts question marks over the sustainability and future of some. How aware of that risk are vulnerable service users?
No, Mark, that's a very good question, and it's something indeed I speak with my managers first thing this morning about, just trying to take the temperature and find out, are they bringing this forward as an issue? And it is now starting to become an issue. Part of the reason for that is that I think it was at the beginning of last month, there was an article by one organisation about the issues they're facing and the sector was facing in terms of securing match funding. So the issue's out there publicly, and therefore inevitably clients are picking it up. So it is out there, and certainly there's I wouldn't want to overstate it and say there's a panic or whatever, but they're aware of it, and clearly as months go on and we get closer to the cliff edge, etc., then they understandably they get more alarmed by it. And so, and particularly when you think of the clients that we get who are stressed, who have depression or whatever already, this is just going to add to that and make things worse for them.
Yeah, no, I can imagine so, but then obviously it's a stressful time for staff too, who
yes,
but given, I suppose, the condition of many of the service users, or the various conditions and that vulnerability that they have, and the length of time it's taken, I suppose, your team to build up relationships, to establish trust with them. Once if someone's job becomes insecure, shall we say, or like you're bound to have staff maybe looking at there's always difficulty retaining staff whenever there's this spectre hanging over them, and they might see, I suppose, more permanent or stable employment opportunities elsewhere, and that's always the risk too, that they'll go and the impact that will have on service users.
Yes, and as I said already, there's Paula, that the fact that recruitment retention is the most difficult it's ever been, certainly in the 12 years that I've been in Action Mental Health. Thankfully, touch wood, we're able to replenish staff if they do go and new staff come on board. But there will come a point, as you're suggesting, where if ESF, if the concerns that are raised publicly are increasing, then inevitably they're going to start to get concerns and maybe look after themselves and understand whether they need to think about their own mortgages. Clearly, we're not at that stage now, but certainly with respect to locally as well, Mark, with respect to our team in Springtown Estate, you may know, up there in the Maiden City. I mean, they are doing great work, and thankfully that they are fully manned at the moment, doing great work, incidentally, knitting for Ukraine. In fact, the mayor is going to visit them on the 7th of April to confirm what they're doing and celebrate what they're doing. But thankfully, that hasn't happened yet. But you're absolutely right with respect to staff. We will have issues in coming months if things aren't resolved, or there's not just some certainty about what the future does hold.
Yeah, I suppose just to concur with your view on the Springtown campus here and there, and the work that your team are doing there. It's fantastic. I've had reason to visit on numerous occasions for numerous different projects that they've been working on, and I've always been impressed by the I suppose, this wide range of different pieces of work that they're doing, as well as the wide range of clients that you are supporting and serving there.
Thank you. I'll make sure that's passed on. Appreciate that.
Okay. Thank you, David. Take care.
Thanks. That's right. I think you're on mute.
I think you're right. I think I was on mute. Yeah, my goodness, how many times have we all heard that? I know no other member has indicated that they want to ask anything further. David, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you again for raising this issue. As you know, this committee is massive and covers so many issues, and so this again is something that needs to be at the forefront. We realise that going forward, and I would hope that the new Committee for Communities, and not the hope, I know they will, the new Committee for Communities will pick up on this and pick up the ball pretty soon on it, and run with it, because we really do value and appreciate all of the work, especially that our third sector do out there, because the statutory sector simply couldn't do it.
I know.
They don't have the capacity, but they don't have the expertise either in the work that you do. So thank you for everything you do, David. It has been lovely to see you again. It's been a while. Maybe get a catch up soon. And thank you for being our very, very last witness of our committee in this mandate today. So thanks, David.
Thank you. And enjoy your new life, by the way. Yes.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, members, we've come to nearly to the end of our meeting, so if we can bring all the members back up into the spotlight again, that would be good. There we are, all coming up. Okay, members, I'm going to move on then to agenda item 24. My goodness, item 24. That's a long agenda, which is AOB. Members, I just would like to say thank you to you all, as this is our final meeting. Thank you for your patience, your hard work, the detailed scrutiny through our bills, our extra meetings. Everybody has stepped up to the mark, and I just want to say a big thank you to all. You've made my job easy, because you're a great committee, a great group of people who have gelled well, given the circumstances. The fact that we haven't been able to meet in person, it has been difficult. And for anybody who's a newer member, us older ones will know just how invaluable that is to all be in the one room. Actually, building those relationships, which are vitally important in any committee. But I think we've done all right. So thank you very much to everyone. I wish you all the very best in the upcoming elections, and that's kind of all there is for me for now. So if there's any other business, speak now, or I will press the button. Nope, we're good to go. And just a big thank you to Janice and Sean and all of the rest of them, who are brilliant. Who I mean, as soon as we finish every committee meeting, they start, an hour later to plan our next committee meeting. It never stops for them. They're just brilliant, and I couldn't have done my job without them all. So well done, you. And so, members, all the rather, so we thanks from Sean. Good stuff, Sean. I'll miss you, Sean. I'll miss you all. But all the very best, folks. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Paula. Bye.
Bye, everyone.